Well, are you thinking about opening up a Trump account? Is it the best choice for college funding? Today, we're going to take a look. Stay tuned for Prudent Money. Good afternoon. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thanks so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. If you've got questions and or comments, you're welcome to go to prudentmoney.com, where you'll find a link at the top of the page that says to Ask Bob. Just click through there and send in your question, comments. We'll get you taken care of. That's off the website, www.prudentmoney.com. Well, the highly anticipated opening is finally here. And as of July 4th, over the weekend, you could go online, download an app, and start your very own Trump account. Like everything else that comes in life, the devil is in the details. But after having gone through and looking at everything with a fine-tooth comb and doing my due diligence, I think it's pretty straight up, but there's some things that you want to know, and you want to ask the bigger question. It's not if I'm going to get my $1,000. It's not if the account does this or does that. What is the main purpose of using this savings vehicle? And is it even though they're giving you $1,000, is it the right savings vehicle? Those are the big major questions that you want to be asking today. We're going to ask the question, as far as our big major questions are going to be, is this the best choice for accumulating growth for college, maybe versus a 529 plan? That's going to be where we're going to drill down, and I'll tell you why. Obviously, if you look at the Trump account, if you look at all the numerous articles that were written about it and still being written about it, they talk a lot about a kid's retirement. If you take this amount of money and you grow it, over umpteen years to 65 from age 0 or 1 to age 65, the enormous amount of money that you're going to accumulate. There's something, though, you want to consider about that, amongst all other things, that might make you think differently, as that should be the sole purpose of where this money goes. But we're going to be taking a look at that as well and going through the details for you. Now, here is something that you really need to keep in mind. This is my disclaimer before I get started in talking about this. This is based on the rules that they have printed and disclosed as of today. The IRS has not come down with a general frame. They have a general framework of what's supposed to happen at age 18, but they don't have a specific in the details framework. So a lot of this is still kind of rolling out. A lot of the rules and regulations are still kind of rolling out. I would say 90% of it's there, but just keep that in mind that some of this can be changed, modified, or included. And as long as you are an investor for your child in that account, then you need to make sure you understand how it works. So let's talk a little bit about this. And what I'm going to do today, I'm going to go through two different sets of rules and regulations on this. And this way you can get an idea of, well, that's the general look at it, which is what most articles are going to give you. And then there is the specific detailed look at it. So here we go. This is eligible. And when I say eligible, I mean any child or up to a teenager age 18, under the age of 18 can open up an account. It's just that, do you get the $1,000 seed money? And what do you have to do to be eligible for that and qualify for that? Children born January 1st, 2025 through December 31st, 2028, who are U.S. citizens qualify for the $1,000 federal seed contribution. Now, once again, keep in mind is that that probably for this account, and we're going to talk a little bit about this as well, but for this account, let's forget the Trump name and the government and all that. Let's just talk about this investment account. the $1,000 is probably the biggest benefit of anything that you're really getting out of this. And in fact, I would suggest that there are, well, we'll talk about that. We'll get into that in a little bit. I don't want to get ahead of myself. But that is I would say the biggest benefit that you're getting is that $1,000. Let's say that your child does not meet the qualifications and does not qualify for the $1,000. It can still be set up as a savings and investment vehicle. And when this money goes into this account, it gets invested per your choice. I'm assuming they said in one set of rules that I read, it talks about the minute the money goes in, it gets invested. I'm assuming that gets invested into what you choose, and most of which are, and we'll talk more about this a little bit later, most of which are stock-based funds. One company, one set of rules and regulations said that they are index type mutual funds and exchange traded funds, and then one just said exchange traded funds. So either one, I'll kind of show you what my opinion is as to where you gear towards when it comes to what's the best accumulation vehicle, and also this is, and we'll talk about this a little bit later as well, but this is something that has an enormous opportunity of opening conversations between you and your child, talking about this account, letting them see on the app. And there is a downside to this, but we'll talk about that. Let's start with opening the account. We got to get it open before we do anything. The parent, legal guardian, or otherwise authorized person, you have to file an IRS Form 4547. From what I understand, there's several places that you can open up a Trump account. However, and a big however, to me, the best place to go would be trumpaccounts.gov. There, and at that website, you can download the app, and that's what if I had a child that age, that's what I would do, is I would download the app, and that's going to be the best thing. Now, one thing to keep in mind, I don't know how they would do it, how they would structure it, but you've got to be careful when you see something like this where people are really interested. They're interested in the concept of saving for their child for the future, yada, 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 all that stuff. You got to remember that scams are just waiting to happen. They're being developed probably as we talk together today about how can we take advantage of this? How can we scam people out of money? And you just got to make sure that you're going to the correct account. The correct account has a contact information on it. It's got all it looks very legitimate, and just be careful that you're not giving any information. As a rule of thumb, the golden rule of identity theft, as I always say, if someone approaches you through an email, through a phone call, or anything like that, that is not what the federal government will be doing to solicit information and to set up accounts. You go to their website, and like I said, there's several places you can go. I don't know if you hit a link and go to the trumpaccounts.gov. Not sure about that, but I'm sure that they have thought through all of the particulars when it comes to keeping this information safe, because it would be an absolute disaster if not. But this form, I talked about this IRS Form 4547. I'm sure they'll walk you through that, and it will not be as big of a deal as it sounds. As long as your child is under the age of 18, then you serve as the custodian of the account, and until the child reaches 18. At age 18, the child is 100% the owner of that account. And I don't know how they alert you to that or how that works, but that is the rules today. A lot of these types of funds, I think President Obama had one, and they just kind of they come out with all this fanfare, and then they kind of dissolve into the future, and nobody's promoting them. and nobody's talking about them, and then they kind of get lost. So that's something else you might want to keep in mind. So if once again, if the child qualifies, the Treasury will deposit $1,000 into the account. The money is invested automatically. Now, the investment options, I had to go pretty into a lengthy search to find exactly what that was. And every article, every resource that I came across described it as it is basically a low-priced type of investment that mimics the S&P 500, or said another way, mimics the stock market. If I were going to invest, and this is not in any way, shape, or form advice or telling you what to do. Okay, so make sure that you hear that. If it were myself, I would look at something like the S&P 500, and I finally found a list. It didn't look like the entire list, but from what I understand, there's not very many choices. But there is an exchange-traded fund that looks just like the S&P 500 and should perform like the S&P 500. That, to me, over time, makes sense. Keep in mind that this type of an account, they do not allow you, from what I understand, do not allow you to make any changes in it. So I'm assuming whatever you pick to begin with is what you stick with over time. So, maybe you want to take a little bit less risk. That's completely up to you and your child. What I would do, not up to your child, but what I would do is maybe seek a financial advisor, or maybe you have one. Talk to your financial advisor and just say, hey, listen, what do you suggest is the best route to go with this money and getting it invested? That would be probably the best thing. And going forward, I don't think you even have the opportunity or the ability to make changes going forward. So we're about halfway through. We're up against a break. This is Bob Brooks. Stick around. I'll be right back. Hello, this is Bob Brooks. Proverbs 22:3 and Proverbs 27:12 are the exact same verse word for word. I call them the stewardship verses of risk. A prudent person foresees danger and takes precautions. The simpleton goes blindly on and suffers the consequences. On the Prudent Money Radio Show, we teach about risk, how to identify it, how to figure it out, and what to do about it. We believe that to be a prudent steward, you have to be a good risk manager. Listen to the Prudent Money Radio Show on Bible School Radio 91.3. Prudent Money, home of the modern-day steward movement.
Dynamic, practical, life-changing.
There's no point in going to church and not letting the Christ who gave birth to the church on the day of Pentecost change your life.
Join us each day as Pastor Paul Shepherd applies the timeless truth of Scripture to everyday life. It's Destined for Victory on this great station.
Weekday afternoons at 3:30 here on Bible School Radio, KDKR.
This is Rob Randall, your host and teacher of the Invisible War radio program. The Invisible War is the study of God's Word on how to walk in Christ's victory in the spiritual battles we face against the powers of darkness. Join me every Sunday morning at 9 right here on KDKR and KYJC in Commerce, your station for life.
Welcome back. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thanks so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. We're talking about the Trump account, which went live July 4th and is available now for you to go sign up. If you just had a baby, in fact, a friend of mine just gave birth to a brand new little baby boy, she could go set up, her and her husband could go set up the Trump account and get the $1,000 because she was in that eligibility period. So you get the money goes in. Say you're eligible for the $1,000, it gets invested. Let's say that you're not eligible for the $1,000. You can still set up the account. You just don't get the seed money, but they're assuming that you put money in it yourself or maybe put money in on a monthly basis, and it adds up over time. Now, the cool thing about this is that unlike there's only a couple of accounts that I know of that you can do this with, is that anyone permitted under the rules may contribute. So that would be including grandparents, relatives, friends, employers, charities. Obviously, there's probably a list of fine print that goes along with that. but they can do that up till total contributions into the account of $5,000 per year. Now, during childhood, as that money grows under the age of 18, as that money grows, it grows tax deferred. So that could be paying out dividends, which normally would be taxable, is not taxable while it's in the Trump account under the age of 18. The money grows tax deferred, and then at the age of 18, the child takes it over. The money starts coming out. Well, let me say this. At 18, now here's where the rules get a little bit foggy. On most of the resources that I checked out and looked this information up, said like it will have the same rules like an IRA. Some other ones went as far as saying it would have the same rules as the IRA, which means that the money is accessible for the child who's now 18. That should send shivers up everybody's spine that your child has got a hold of maybe a good bit of money at age 18. And that if it was under today's rules, they could take the money out, and that and incidentally, they said the rules that are printed today and have been released make no doubt about the fact the child can take the money out. The question is, would the child have to pay a 10% penalty like an IRA? No, and will the child have to pay? Will that money be taxed at the child's tax rate or the parent's tax rate, which would be a lot higher? That's something that has to be cleared up and put in the IRS rules and regs. But that is, from what I understand, that has not been determined yet. In fact, I haven't even seen anything address that. But that would be something that I would want to know. So they give some examples. If no money is withdrawn, the account can simply remain invested. So that's at age 18. And they leave it invested. They don't touch it at age 25. They continue contributing to it if eligible under IRA rules. This particular resource actually spells it out under IRA rules, whereas some don't. And then at age 40, it can continue compounding and growing. Then in retirement, it's used as a traditional IRA. So then they go through and give examples as to if you left it alone, what it would actually be worth and that kind of thing. And keep in mind, and we'll talk a little bit about this, is that yes, it'll grow and it will compound, but the number that they print, that it could be this much of money if you leave it alone and let it grow, based on history and all those kinds of things. That's not. You need to get the number that is equivalent to today's number. So let's say that it grew to $5,600. The $1,000 grew to $5,600 at age 18. Well, if it was in today's numbers, to kind of give you an idea of spending power wise, it would be roughly $3,000 something as of today versus in the future. So it's like the same thing with, we always talk about these articles who write about taking money and investing it because you're trying to accumulate $1 million at age 65 and you're 40 today. Well, $1 million today at age 40 is going to be a whole lot different than what they're projecting it to be at age 65. Just remember that spending power is way different in the future than it is today because inflation. It just takes more to spend. Let's say you have the difference between $1 million in the future worth $600,000 today. It definitely is not the same thing. So just keep that in mind. I think one of the greatest aspects of this plan is, once again, the ability to share with your son or your daughter how money works and how money grows. It opens up the conversation, and it's also a great, I think, anytime that you have a savings type plan, that it makes sense. Let's see. Here's some additional information about the eligibility. We talked about being born between January 1st, 2025 and December 31st, 2028. They must be a U.S. citizen at birth, have a Social Security number, and then the Treasury provides the $1,000 seed money. Now, this second resource talks about what the account can and cannot do. And it's interesting. it says the account cannot buy Tesla, Apple, Bitcoin, options, or penny stocks. I don't know where he comes up with all that, but and obviously you don't even have the ability to do that anyway. On another page of this information, they talk about that there's no withdrawals. Actually, before the age of 18, there's no withdrawals, there's no trading, no borrowing, no loans. The custodian, which would be the parent or it could be a friend, or you have to meet the definition of custodian, but it's someone who is authorized over that child to take care of that child. The custodian controls everything, and the child owns the account. So the ownership, though, does once again this points us out in a little bit more detail. The ownership control transfers to the child at age 18, like we talked about, and the child now decides to either remain and be invested, begin distributions, continue long-term investing. I would think, once again, and just speculating here, that they wouldn't penalize the child 10% for taking the money out. But to me, this is the biggest problem, is because at age 18, and then probably a little bit different for the generations of today. I think that the generations of the day, where you're talking about young adults in their 20s and kids in their mid to late teenage years, are making better choices and are much, much better when it comes to money than we are. But just kind of keep that in mind. I mean, I think that is one of the biggest downfalls of this plan. And once again, when I say downfall, I wouldn't want to give a child at age 18 total control over any investment account with a considerable amount of money, or potentially a considerable amount of money. So let's talk a little bit about the 529 plan versus the Trump account. Before I say that, why I think this is a great idea for saving for college is because actually you can use both plans. But let's look at the 529 plan. It does not restrict use at age 18. So the custodian of the account, which is typically the parent or the guardian, has full total control over the 529 plan. The 529 plan grows tax-free, tax-deferred, just like the Trump account. However, the money comes out of the 529 plan tax-free, whereas you pay taxes and potentially penalties of 10% if you're under the age of 59 and a half on distributions from the Trump account. The 529 plan gets 2 investment changes a year, and from what I understand, with the Trump account, you get absolutely no movement that I am aware of. So I don't know how they go about treating diversification. And to be fair, I don't think that there's going to be really a whole lot of diversifying going along, which is a little bit problematic as we're teaching kids to learn how to deal with money. The Trump account limits the amount of money that you can put into the account. And a 529 plan, you can fully max out a 529 plan, which is in the hundreds of thousands of dollars if you wanted to. So there are some tax planning issues that you want to look at, but the point is that you can put way more money into a 529 plan. And in fact, they even address a little bit as to the pros and cons of the Trump account versus all the other different types of accounts you could use. And they said primarily you have to use the money in a 529 plan for education. With the Trump accounts, you don't. Well, yes, you do have to use it for the 529 money primarily for education. However, keep in mind that if you don't, the money comes out and is taxed just like it would be taxed if you took the money out of a Trump account. So there's really no advantage given right there by a Trump account. It just comes down to $1,000 that you potentially get as seed money. And really, if you look at that, it's over 18 years, that $1,000 is not just worth a tremendous amount of money in today's dollars. If you took like I think an 8% return, averaged it out, it was worth like $3,600, something like that. Do not take that as cold hard facts. I know this off the top of my head. I just didn't look it up before I got on the air. But just keep in mind, there's no advantage there. I don't see any advantage at all for foregoing a 529 plan over a Trump account. Now, having said that, can you have both? Absolutely, and that's what I would do. I would have $1,000. I'd get my free money. I always want to get the free money. Let that grow independently by itself. Then start putting money back on a monthly basis and accumulating that in your 529 plan. Not advice, not in direction, nothing like that. That's just what I would do, and it's something to think about. You can always go seek the help of your financial advisor to get more information and directions and advice as to what makes the most sense for your situation, as well as for your tax situation and your tolerance for risk. This is Bob Brooks, and you have been listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. If you got a question for me, please go to the website at www.prudentmoney.com. We are all out of time. Until we do meet again next time, keep the faith and have a great rest of the day.
That's all the time we have for today. Questions or comments for Bob, or to find out more great information like what you've just heard, visit www.prudentmoney.com. Be sure to join Bob Brooks again for the next edition of Prudent Money.